Welcome back. Today, we're diving into a truly epic explainer. We're going to be tracing a century-spanning journey that weaves together mythology, history, and just profound human devotion. We're looking at the unbelievable story behind one of the most revered deities on the planet. It's a tale that kicks off with the dramatic end of an entire era and follows the incredible physical and spiritual journey of a sacred, indestructible heart. Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever actually wondered why Lord Jagannath, a deity who draws literally millions of devotees to his massive ancient temple in Puri, looks so uniquely different from other gods? Think about it. He has incomplete limbs. His huge, round eyes never blink. He never sleeps, never takes a break, and yet he is worshipped as the Lord of the universe. Well, it turns out this incomplete form hides a monumental secret. And to figure it out, we have to go all the way back to the sinking city of Dwarka and the final days of Lord Krishna.
Part 1. The Fall of an Era.
To unravel this mystery, we've got to travel way back in time, to the immediate, somber aftermath of the Great Mahabharata War. So the Kurukshetra War had just violently wrapped up after 18 days, and the earth was literally soaked in blood. Gandhari, who had just lost all 100 of her sons, was understandably in unimaginable pain. She confronted Krishna. She demanded to know why he, the all-powerful, didn't just stop the war. And in her overwhelming grief, she cursed him. She declared that just as her lineage was destroyed, his Yadu dynasty would destroy itself from within in exactly 36 years. And his glorious, golden city of Dwarka, it would be totally swallowed by the sea. Now, how did Krishna react? He just smiled. He calmly accepted the curse because he knew this was all part of his divine play. And sure enough, exactly 36 years later, that curse played out. The Yadavas turned on each other, and the majestic city of Dwarka slowly slipped beneath the ocean waves. Amidst all this chaotic destruction, a solitary Krishna retreated deep into a forest and rested under a tree. Now, his foot was glowing with this red aura, making it look almost exactly like a divine lotus resting on the ground. Well, from a distance, a hunter named Jara saw that red glow flickering behind the bushes and completely mistook it for the ear of a deer. He let a fateful arrow fly, and it struck the Lord. When Jara rushed over and realized his massive tragic mistake, he just collapsed in tears. But Krishna, still with that calm, reassuring smile, told him not to weep. He explained that this was simply karmic repayment. You see, back in a previous era, the Treta Yuga, Jara had actually been the monkey king Bali, who Krishna, in his incarnation as Lord Rama, had struck from behind a tree. So the cosmic debt was paid, and Krishna's mortal journey came to a close.
Part 2. The Journey of the Indestructible Heart.
What happens next is just a story of absolute wonder. We're talking about a shift from the end of a physical body to the survival of something eternal. The sheer miraculous nature of these next events is honestly staggering. Arjuna rushes to the forest and performs Krishna's cremation. The flames consume everything. But one single item absolutely refuses to turn to ash. It was Krishna's divine heart, literally vibrating with the love of the entire universe, completely untouched by the roaring fire. Suddenly, a heavenly voice commands Arjuna to place this glowing, indestructible heart onto a wooden plank and just release it into the ocean. So he does. And that heart drifted on the ocean waves across eras until it eventually washed up on the shores of the Mahanadi River in Odisha. Eventually, this glowing, sacred heart was discovered on the shore by Vishvavasu. He was the chief of the ancient Sabar tribe. He instantly recognized the immense divine presence radiating from it, and he took it to a deeply hidden cave. He named this glowing presence Neel Madhav. Now, his worship wasn't about elaborate rituals or complex grand chanting. Not at all. It was just simple, pure, unblemished conversation between a devotee and the divine, a total heart-to-heart.
Part 3. The Tale of Two Devotees.
But, pure devotion in a hidden cave? That kind of secret can't stay hidden forever. Enter King Indradyumna of Avanti, who is about to change the course of everything. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive contrast between two very different paths to the divine. On one hand, you have Vishwavasu's simple, highly secretive, purely emotional devotion. And on the other hand, you've got King Indradyumna. He's a powerful monarch who hears a faint rumor from a wandering sage about this Neel Madhav. And what does he do?
He goes all in. He desperately deploys all of his royal resources, his best scholars, and launches these grand quests just to find the deity.
The king ends up sending this incredibly clever, scholarly emissary named Vijapati to track down the hidden god. Vijapati shows up at the tribal village, settles in, and over time actually falls in love with and marries Vishwavasu's daughter, Lalita. He eventually begs her to convince her father to let him see Nil Madhav, just once. Well, Vishwavasu's heart finally melts, but he lays down one strict condition. Vijapati must be blindfolded the entire time, so he absolutely cannot learn the path of the cave. But Vijapati was cunning. He secretly hid a handful of mustard seeds in his hand, and as he was being led in total darkness, he quietly dropped them one by one along the hidden path.
Fast forward a few months, and those little drop seeds had sprouted into this continuous, undeniable trail of green plants. King Indradyumna eagerly followed this living, breathing map, trekking across forests and hills. But when he finally arrived at the secret cave, it was completely empty. Nil Madhav had vanished. The king was absolutely crushed. He thought he had lost his one chance at the divine forever. But that very night, Lord Vishnu appeared to the heartbroken king in a dream and told him not to despair. The Lord explained that his time in that specific cave was simply over, but he promised he would return to the king in an entirely new form.
This dream directed the king to the shores of Puri, telling him that a massive, sweet-smelling wooden log would soon wash ashore from the sea. This wasn't just any wood. This was the Daru Brahma, the supreme divine consciousness perfectly embedded within a sacred log, bearing the unmistakable marks of Vishnu, a conch, a discus, a mace, and a lotus. So the king finds this mystical log, and being a king, he immediately orders hundreds of his servants, thick, heavy ropes, and his mighty royal elephants to haul it onto the shore. But guess what? They couldn't budge it, not even an inch. It was as if this piece of wood was physically rooted to the earth itself. The king, suddenly realizing his massive error in relying on brute force, sends for Vishwavasu. The moment the tribal chief walks up and gently places his hands on the wood, it becomes as light as a feather. He just easily glides it right up onto the shore. It's such a beautiful, powerful reminder that pure love and devotion effortlessly overcome sheer physical force and royal pride every single time. Part 4. The Divine Carpenter. So now that the king finally had this sacred wood, they faced a new problem: carving it. The wood was so incredibly, unfathomably hard that when the kingdom's absolute finest sculptors tried to carve it, their chisels literally shattered on impact. In utter desperation, the king prayed. And suddenly, this elderly, highly mysterious carpenter showed up out of nowhere. Many believe this was actually the divine architect, Vishwakarma. He agreed to carve the idols, but he had one incredibly strict condition. He had to be locked inside a room with the wood for 21 days straight. If anyone opened that door early for any reason, he'd leave immediately. The king agreed, and for the first 14 days, everything went according to plan. The rhythmic thwack and clink of a hammer and chisel echoed constantly from behind those heavy locked doors. But then came the 15th day. The sounds just abruptly stopped. Absolute, dead silence fell over the entire palace. Queen Gandhari started to panic. She was absolutely terrified that this fragile old man, who had been locked inside without a single drop of food or water for over 2 weeks, had simply collapsed and died. Driven by the queen's relentless, frantic pleas, the king's resolve finally broke. On the 16th day, he violated his sacred promise and threw open the doors. And just as warned, the old carpenter had vanished into thin air. But left behind in the room were 3 idols: Lord Jagannath, his brother Balabhadra, and his sister Subhadra. The catch? They were unfinished. Jagannath had no hands, no feet, and these strange, enormous, unblinking eyes. The king immediately fell to his knees, just utterly crushed by the guilt of breaking his word. But then, a divine voice echoed through the chamber, bringing a profound revelation. So the crucial point is what that voice said next. It told the king, "This is my will. My large, unblinking eyes are so I can watch over my devotees endlessly without ever resting. I need no physical hands or feet to assist them. My pure will is entirely enough. This incomplete form is actually my most perfect sacred form." Part 5. A God for Everyone. Hearing this, the king's guilt was completely washed away. That divine, indestructible heart of Krishna from all those centuries ago was taken and placed deep inside the wooden chest of the new Jagannath idol. Lord Brahma himself descended to awaken the statues, and the sandy shores of Puri became a permanent residence for the divine. And this brings us to a fascinating modern reality that comes straight from this ancient history. Every 12 to 19 years, there's a highly secretive ritual called Nabakalera. The old wooden idols are respectively retired and brand new ones are carved. But the divine heart, that exact same pulsating energy from millennia ago, has to be transferred to the new idol. The priests who perform this transfer, they have to do it completely blindfolded, with their hands heavily wrapped in layers of cloth. The belief is that the raw, unfiltered power of the absolute divine is simply way too immense for direct human contact or sight. And then, of course, there's the famous annual Rath Yatra. Once a year, the deities literally leave the grand confines of their massive temple. They're placed on 3 colossal, magnificent chariots, Nandigasha, Taladwaja, and Darpadalana, and they roll right out onto the grand road of Puri. Why? Because the Lord steps out for those who cannot step in. Out there on the streets, the massive ropes used to pull these huge chariots are held by millions of hands. In that specific moment, a king and a commoner, the ultra-rich and the extremely poor, are entirely equal. They are totally united by the singular act of pulling their god forward.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought to really ponder. We so often look for absolute perfection in the divine, right? Flawless marble statues, pristine temples, rigid, inflexible rules. But the story of Lord Jagannath completely challenges all of that. He has no hands to hold weapons, no feet to stand upon, and eyes that refuse to blink, just so he never misses a single tear of his devotees. It really begs the question, is true divinity actually found in a physically perfect, untouchable form? Or is it found in an open, eternally beating heart that actively leaves its sanctuary to be out on the streets, accessible to absolutely everyone? Thanks so much for joining me on this journey today.